What do recovering alcoholics, boxing champions, and criminal masterminds all have in common? Before I tell you that, I want you to think about the following quote. What has been will be again, what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Now, that's an almost 3,000-year-old quote from the Bible, specifically the book of Ecclesiastes, and it sums up a truth about the world and everything in it. That truth is that circumstances change, but people don't. Humans are just animals. We might have bigger brains and better technology, but we're still just apes in suits trying to figure out this thing called life. In the 21st century, with smartphones, high speed internet, and cryptocurrencies, we still fall in love, fight, trust, and betray one another, just as we did 3,000 years ago. This is why old solutions are so effective at solving modern problems. Enter the art of war. The Art of War is one of those books that everyone talks about and quotes, but most people have never taken the time to read it, take notes, and try to apply it. It's a lot like Stoicism. Everyone talks about how it's changed their life, but the closest they've ever gotten to putting it into practice is buying a copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius and putting it on their bookshelf to impress people. And that's a shame because The Art of War is super short. And like most of the super short classics, it's free. You can find copies of it everywhere online to download, or you can take it out from a good old fashioned library. Digging into it will give you a fresh perspective on new problems despite predating the Bible. This ancient Chinese text offers profound insights that are as relevant today as they were 2.5 millennia ago. In this video, we'll explore how this timeless wisdom can help you navigate the complex battlefields of modern life, from the boardroom to your personal relationships. Now, I spent months studying this text and collecting quotes and dissecting the ideas, only to discover that I've been applying its principles to overcome various challenges all my life. So, unlike your standard interpretation of the art of war, I'll show you how to specifically use classic Chinese military strategies to achieve modern success with minimal effort. By the end of this video, you'll have 4 powerful but incredibly simple strategies motivated by the art of war that you can apply immediately to overcome obstacles and achieve success in ways you never thought possible. What if I told you that your ability to adapt could be your most potent asset, more powerful than any skill that you possess? Evolutionary biologist Charles Darwin once said, "It's not the strongest nor most intelligent of the species that survives, but the one most adaptable to change." If you dig into the history of this quote, it turns out that Darwin never actually said this. This quote was a summary of Darwin's ideas presented by another professor, but that doesn't make the idea any less accurate. Your ability to shift your plans according to circumstance will determine whether you succeed or fail. Nowadays, many people lament about old days or hope for something new, but either perspective sets you up for failure in the present moment. You must figure out how to overcome the difficulty in front of you, or you will get left behind by those who will. It's like the people today who hate AI and how it's taken over everything and that no one reads blogs anymore. Side note, that's why I started taking this YouTube thing a little more seriously. Or that almost 75% of couples today met online. All your ranting and raving about how things are changing doesn't stop things from changing. The only thing you can do is make sure that you don't get left behind like the people who still use flip phones. Sun Tzu says specifically, as circumstances are favorable, one should modify one's plans. In our rapidly changing world, those who can quickly adjust their strategies are the ones who thrive. Really, they're the only ones who survive. If you do what you've always done, you'll get the results you've always gotten. Depending on those results, you might be fine. However, the only constant in life is change. So you need to be adaptable because it's not a matter of if, but when what you've always done will no longer be effective. Following that idea, Sun Tzu says, "Do not repeat the tactics which have gained you one victory, but let your methods be regulated by the infinite variety of circumstances." Heavyweight boxing legend Mike Tyson is famous for saying a lot of things, but one of his keenest observations was everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. In other words, no matter how well constructed your plans are, most plans don't survive chaos. Prussian General Helmuth von Moltke expressed this idea with a bit more eloquence, but it remains the same. He says, no plan of operations extends with any certainty beyond the first encounter with the main enemy forces. Only the layman believes in the course of a campaign. He sees the consistent implementation of an original thought that has been considered in advance in every detail and retained to the end. Now, that doesn't mean you don't need to plan, because failure to plan is planning to fail. Tyson didn't say that, but it's still a worthwhile idea to consider. Now, the only strategy worse than not planning for things to go wrong is naively believing that everything will go right. When I was 26, I worked as a security guard at a men's homeless shelter. There are many reasons why someone becomes homeless, but one scenario stood out to me that I saw repeatedly. I'll give you an example. I saw more than one guy who had been laid off just a few weeks earlier come in. So he couldn't make the rent, had no savings, and got evicted. This is one of those experiences that is far better learned vicariously. You don't need to learn everything the hard way, and you won't survive to reap enough of the benefit of the lesson if you do. There are several stats about how most Americans don't have anything saved. Now, some people doubt that most Americans have less than $1,000 saved, but I've seen this too many times to doubt it, that people are wiped out from a last minute emergency. Even if you had a $10,000 saved, how long would it last in a place like San Francisco or New York? So I'm inclined to believe them. So if you have nothing saved, work on increasing your economic value and building additional income streams, because being homeless is no way to live. Sun Tzu tells us the art of war teaches us to rely not on the likelihood of the enemy not coming, but on our own readiness to receive him. By preparing for the worst case scenario, you'll be ready for anything. It's better to get ready for the bad times when things are going well than to hope the bad times never come. Because the worst time to learn how to fight is while you're in the middle of getting your ass kicked. Now, there are two keys to effective preparation: internal knowledge, the knowledge of yourself, and external knowledge, the knowledge of your surroundings and circumstances. Regarding this effective preparation, most of us are pretty good at identifying external events. At the very least, we're at least mildly aware of obstacles and impediments that might spring up, but we're typically awful at considering how we're going to mess up our own plans. But what if I told you the key to success was knowing your own personal weaknesses? Well, I don't have to. Sun Tzu does it for me. You may have already learned this the hard way, but did you know that you are your own worst enemy? Do you want to know why drug interventions rarely work? It's because until a person wants to stop using drugs or abusing alcohol, they'll keep using drugs and abusing alcohol. And they'll keep this behavior up because they don't believe they have a problem. They'll say things like, I can quit anytime. Or, it's not like I'm an alcoholic, despite all the evidence to the contrary. Now, I don't want you to think I'm speaking from my high horse over here. As of this recording, I've got 10 years of sobriety, and I hope to have another infinity until I die, right? I've only been able to do that because I looked at myself and accepted that I had an issue, and I had to work it out. The causes of alcohol are numerous and debated, but what's not under debate is what I mentioned here. If you don't know yourself and know that you have a problem, you can't ever do anything about that problem. Even worse, you'll make it worse until there's nothing you can do about that problem at all, because death or imprisonment has solved it for you. This is also why budgeting our money fails and most people don't have anything saved. Assuming you make enough money to where you can effectively budget, and many people are not in the financial situation to be able to do this easily, but if you are not one of those people, but still find yourself failing with a budget, the problem is that you don't know yourself well enough. It's not discipline. Let me explain a little more. Think of budgeting like a diet. Rarely the challenge with dieting is not knowing what to avoid or lack of motivation. Very often, A person doesn't set their environment up for success by doing things like removing undesirable food from the refrigerator. Harkening back to the sobriety issue, the easiest way to stay sober is to never be in the same place as alcohol. Not all recovering alcoholics need to permanently stay away from bars, but they know themselves well enough to know that they have a problem, so many of them do. Relying on willpower can work, but if your willpower is that good, you wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. When you know yourself, avoiding battles you'll lose is much easier. Sun Tzu says, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Reminding us that understanding ourselves is as crucial as understanding our opponents or circumstances. In my story, the opponent was alcohol, but this principle applied when I was a boxer. Now let's take this a step further. Understanding yourself and your opponent is powerful, but how you use that knowledge truly makes a difference. This brings us to a final principle from Sun Tzu, one which might surprise you. Now, what if I told you that the key to winning isn't always being the strongest, but rather being the smartest? It's not just adaptability sometimes. One of my favorite movies is Martin Scorsese's star-studded crime thriller, The Departed. Spoiler alert incoming for anyone who hasn't seen it, but the movie also came out in 2006 and it's 2024, so 18 years is more than enough. In The Departed, South Boston cop Billy Costigan, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, goes undercover in the organization of Irish mob boss Frank Costello, played by Jack Nicholson. Meanwhile, Costello has been able to stay one step ahead of the police because he has his own mole in the police department, Officer Colin Sullivan, played by Matt Damon. At first, no one in the gang knows there's a rat, and no one in the police department knows there's a mole, although there are suspicions. To combat those suspicions, Costigan's handlers in the police department keep all information away from the rest of the department. This control of information allows the police to make great strides in their fight against Costello's gang. But in the ultimate twist, it turns out that Costello has a get-out-of-jail-free card because he's been working as an FBI informant, giving up information on his rivals to the Italian mob. P.S. Never snitch if you're in crime. Now, this movie is based on the real-life events surrounding Irish mobster Whitey Bulger and his mole in the FBI, John Connolly. I thought that was cool, but I didn't know it when I first saw the movie. That just goes to show you the power of the strategic use of information. The movie ends with the heroes and the villains dying, but that's Hollywood. In real life, Whitey Bulger was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences, plus 5 years for good measure, and Agent Connolly retired with honors but was eventually imprisoned on 2 separate charges. Sun Tzu states that all warfare is based on deception. In business and life, strategic use of information can give you a significant advantage over competitors who may be stronger or have more resources, even if those competitors are rival criminals or the government. Now that you've learned these timeless strategies from the art of war, you can face life's challenges with the wisdom of an ancient military genius. But this is just the beginning of your journey to mastering the art of strategy. Part of strategy requires the resilience to see your plans through and the mental fortitude to deal with failures regardless of how well you adapt or plan. If you want to develop the resilience to apply these ideas even further, check out my video on what I learned from boxing about building resilience. It'll change how you approach difficult things and make it much easier to apply the concepts from the art of war. Click on the link on the screen now and take the next step to becoming a master strategist in life and business.